Hey everyone, welcome back to S.E.T For You. In this video, I'll be walking through the June 2025 Edexcel GCSE Foundation Maths Paper 2 exam. So grab a pen, a calculator and some paper and let's get started. In the first question, we are told to change 3 weeks into days. So remember that in 1 week, there are 7 days. And so in 3 weeks, they'll simply equal 7 times 3 days. And that gives us 21 days. So your final answer is simply 21 days. In the second question, we are told to simplify 2 times 3n. So 2 times 3 gives us 6, and all you have to do is add the n onto the end, so your final answer is 6n. In question 3, we are told to write 0.7 as a percentage. So remember, if you convert from a decimal to a percentage, you need to multiply it by 100. So you can simply put in your calculator 0.7 times 100, and that will give you a value of 70. So your final answer is 70%. In question 4, we are given some temperatures in degrees Celsius. Write the temperatures in order, starts with the lowest temperature. So remember that the lowest temperature is the largest negative number. So in this case, we're starting with -6, and then we have -3, and then 2, and then 5, and finally 7. So in the first part of question 5, we are told to write down a sensible metric unit that can be used to measure the height of a mountain. So if you're measuring the height of a mountain, you would measure that in kilometers. And for the weight of a button, in the second part, we can measure that in grams. In question 6, we are told that 4 numbers add up to 76. One of the numbers is 13. The other 3 numbers are each the same number. Work out the value of each of the other 3 numbers. So for our unknown number, I'm going to denote that as x. So in this case, we have 13 plus x plus x plus x, and that equals 76. So I have 13 plus 3x, and that equals 76. Therefore, I'm going to subtract 13 from both sides. And so 3x equals 76 minus 13, which is 63. Therefore, x equals 63 divided by 3, and that gives me 21. So my final answer is 21. In question 7, we are given a rule to work out the cost of buying a number of floorboards. The cost equals £55 multiplied by the number of floorboards. Toby buys a number of floorboards. The cost is £330. Work out the number of floorboards Toby buys. So the first thing I'm going to do is denote my number of floorboards as x because it is an unknown. Therefore, £55 multiplied by x equals the cost, which is £330. Therefore, to obtain the value of x, I need to divide both sides by £55. Therefore, x simply equals 330 divided by £55, and that gives you 6. So our final answer is 6. In question 8, we are given a list of numbers, and in the first part of this question, we are told to find the mode. So your mode represents the number that has the highest frequency. So in other words, it's the number that appears the most. So in this case, our answer is simply 6. In the second part of this question, we are told to work out the range. So remember, the range represents the difference between the highest value and the lowest value. The highest value in our list of numbers is 14, and the lowest value in our list of numbers is 5. Therefore, 14 minus 5 equals 9. So your final answer is 9. In question 9, we are given a straight line, which is PQR, and we are told to work out the value of x. So remember that on a straight line, all the angles add up to 180 degrees. Therefore, x plus 85 degrees plus 30 degrees equals 180 degrees. Therefore, x equals 180 degrees minus 30 degrees minus 85 degrees. And if you put that on your calculator, that gives you 65 degrees. So your final value of x is simply 65. And for the second part of this question, we need to give a reason for our answer. So remember that angles on a straight line add up to 180 degrees. In question 10, we are told that 20% of cars sold last year were electric cars. Write down the ratio of the number of electric cars sold last year to the number of non-electric cars sold last year. Give your ratio in its simplest form. So if 20% of the cars sold last year were electric cars, then the non-electric cars has to be 80%, because remember, the total percentage must be 100. So in other words, the ratio of electric cars sold last year to non-electric cars sold last year is 20 to 80. And so to give our ratio in its simplest form, we can see that both values have a highest common factor of 20. So I'm going to divide them both by 20. Therefore, my answer is 1 to 4. So your final ratio is 1 to 4. In question 11, Jamie drives his van for 150 minutes. He stops for a rest. Jamie then drives for a further 75 minutes. show that Jamie drives for less than 4 hours in total. So the total journey time will simply be 150 minutes plus 75 minutes, and that equals 225 minutes. And given as 1 hour is the same as 60 minutes, we need to divide 225 by 60 to convert our minutes into hours. So 225 divided by 60, and that equals 3.75 hours, which is clearly less than 4 hours. So we have shown that Jamie drives for less than 4 hours in total. In the second part of this question, we are told that a car travels for 2 hours at a steady speed of 65 miles per hour. Work out the distance the car travels. So remember that distance equals speed multiplied by time. So we are given the speed of 65 miles per hour, and we're going to multiply that by the total number of hours the car travels, which is 2 hours. And so the total distance will simply be 130 miles. So your final answer is 130 miles. In question 12, we are told that a factory makes mountain bikes and road bikes. Each bike has disc brakes or rim brakes or caliper brakes. In June, the factory makes a total of 240 bikes. 102 of the bikes are mountain bikes. 75 of the 110 bikes with disc brakes are mountain bikes, and 105 bikes have rim brakes. 20 of the mountain bikes have caliper brakes. Use this information to complete the two-way table. So the first thing we know is that the factory makes a total of 240 bikes. So I'm going to put 240 here. We also know that 102 of the bikes are mountain bikes. So then I'm going to write 102 here. Therefore, to obtain the value of the total number of road bikes, we can subtract 102 from 240, and that gives you 138. 75 of the 110 bikes with disc brakes are mountain bikes. So I'm going to put 75 right here. And there are 110 bikes with disc brakes. So I know that this value here is 110. Therefore, to obtain the value of the number of road bikes with disc brakes, I can subtract 75 from 110, and that gives me 35. We also know that 105 bikes have rim brakes, so that means that this value here is 105. Therefore, to obtain the number of bikes with caliper brakes, I'm going to add these two values and subtract that from 240. And when you put that in your calculator, that gives you 25. And the final bit of information we have been given is that 20 of the mountain bikes have caliper brakes. So that means that we're going to put the value of 20 here. And so at this point, this table should be relatively easy to complete because we know that 5 of the road bikes have caliper brakes. We can add 35 and 5 and then subtract that value from 138 to get the number of road bikes with rim brakes. And when you put that into your calculator, that gives you a value of 98. And so finally, to obtain the number of mountain bikes with rim brakes, we subtract 98 from 105, and that gives us 7. And that right there is your two-way table. In the first part of question 13, we are told to simplify n times n times n, which will simply just give you n cubed. In the second part of this question, we are told to solve 5k minus 4 equals 26. So the first thing you need to do is add 4 to both sides. And so minus 4 and 4 will cancel, and that will leave you with 5k. And 26 plus 4 equals 30. Therefore, to obtain k, we can divide both sides by 5. So 30 divided by 5 gives us 6. So the final answer for 13b is 6. In question 14, we are told that 120 students in year 10 each choose one language to study. The table below shows information about their choices. Complete the accurate pie chart to show this information. And so remember, for this question, the first thing we need to acknowledge is that in a full circle, the angle is 360. That means that the number of students in each language category as a fraction of 120, which is a total number of students in year 10, multiplied by 360 will give you the corresponding angle. For example, with the French students, I have 45 divided by 120, and I'm going to multiply that value by 360. And when you put that into your calculator, that gives you 135 degrees. So now I know that this formula is correct. So what I'm going to do is just repeat the same thing for Mandarin and Spanish students. So 20 divided by 120 multiplied by 360 equals 60 degrees. And 55 divided by 120 multiplied by 360 equals 165 degrees. And so in order to complete the accurate pie chart, using this information, I'm going to try and approximate 90 degrees, which is roughly this. And so to get 60 degrees, I know that's slightly smaller, which will roughly be there. So I know that this angle is 60 degrees, and that represents the Mandarin students. So I'm going to write Mandarin right here. Therefore, I know that the remaining angle will be 165 degrees, and that will correspond to the Spanish students. And that's your final answer for question 14A. In the second part of this question, we are told that in another pie chart, the number of students in year 11 studying French is represented by an angle of 150 degrees. Navi says this means that French was chosen by more students in year 11 than by students in year 10. Is Navi correct? Explain why you think this. So the answer for this question is no. And why is this the case? Because more students may have chosen Mandarin or Spanish. And remember, we don't know the number of year 11 students. So that's why Navi is incorrect. So your final answer for this question is no, because more students may have chosen Mandarin or Spanish, and the number of year 11 students is unknown. In question 15, we are told that there are 20 buttons in a box, and these buttons consist of 6 blue buttons, 9 green buttons, and 5 red buttons. Jay puts 12 more buttons in the box. These buttons are either blue buttons or red buttons. Jay is going to pick at random one button from the box. The probability that this button will be blue is a quarter. How many more red buttons did Jay put in the box? You must show all your work in. So the first thing we know is that the total number of buttons in the box is 20 plus 12, and that equals 32. We also know that there are 9 green buttons, and the probability of picking out a blue button equals a quarter. So the number of blue buttons equals 32 multiplied by a quarter, and so that value will give you 8. Therefore, to obtain the number of additional blue buttons that were added to the box, we can subtract 6 from 8, and that value gives you 2. So that means 2 out of the 12 additional buttons that were added to the box are blue. Therefore, 12 minus 2 equals 10. And this value of 10 represents the number of additional red buttons that were added to the box. So your final answer for question 15 is 10. In question 16, we are told that a train travels from Derby to Sheffield. The travel graph shows information about the train's journey. Work out the speed of the train. Give your answer in miles per hour. So a standard equation that you all must know is that speed equals distance divided by time. So in the first 30 minutes, the distance traveled is 35 miles, and the time taken in hours is 0.5, as we need to work out the speed in miles per hour. So 35 divided by 0.5 gives you 70. And so your final answer is 70 miles per hour. In the second part of this question, we are told that the train stays at Sheffield for 15 minutes. Show this information on the travel graph. So if we take a closer look at this graph, we can see that between 30 and 60 minutes there are 4 boxes. So I can divide 30 by 4, which gives you 7.5. So each of these boxes represents 7.5 minutes. So we know that 15 minutes will be halfway between 30 and 60. So 15 minutes from 30 minutes is 45. So all we just need to do is draw a horizontal line from this point up onto this point, and that represents the time that the train stays at Sheffield. In question 17, we are told that a village hall needs a new heating system. The cost of the heating system is £9,000. A community grant will pay 85% of this cost. The village council will pay the rest of the cost. Work out how much the village council will pay. So remember that 85% is just 85 over 100. So 85 over 100 multiplied by £9,000 gives us a value of 7,650 when you put that into your calculator. And so that represents how much the community grant will pay. Given as the village council will pay the rest of the cost, we can subtract this value from £9,000. So £9,000 minus £7,650 gives us a value of 1,350. So your final answer is £1,350. In question 18, we are told that a cube has a volume of 512 centimeter cubed. Work out the surface area of the cube. So this is a rough sketch of a cube. I'm going to call this width x, this length x, and this height x. And in order to obtain the volume of a cube, I need to multiply all 3 of those values. So in other words, x times x equals 512. So x cubed equals 512. So to obtain the value of x, I need to take the cube root of 512. And when you put that into your calculator, that gives you 8. And to obtain the value of the surface area of the cube, you need to work out the area of each face. So I know that the area of each face is just the area of a square, and there are 6 faces in a cube. So what I'm going to do is work out the area of one face and then multiply that value by 6. So my surface area, SA, equals 8 times 8, which is the area of one face, multiplied by the total number of faces, which is 6. And that gives me a value of 384 centimeters squared. So the surface area of my cube is 384 centimeters squared. In question 19, we are given an inequality in y shown on a number line. Write down the largest possible integer value for y. So on the number line, as you move towards the left, your numbers decrease. So that means that the largest possible integer value for y would have to be -2. So your answer to part A is -2. On the number line below, show the inequality. -4 is less than or equal to x, which is less than 2. So if x is greater than or equal to -4, that's going to be a full circle over -4, and x is less than 2, so that's going to be an open circle. Okay, so I'm not going to color or shade in my circle because it doesn't equal 2, it has to be less than 2. And so all I need to do now is just join these two circles, and that right there is your final answer. In the first part of question 20, we are told to express 250 as a product of its prime factors. So I can write this as 250 and factorize 2, and so 250 divided by 2 is 125. I can continue factorizing prime factors, so the next factor is going to be 5. 125 divided by 5 is 25, and 25 divided by 5 again just gives me 5. So to express this as a product of its prime factors, I need to multiply all the numbers that are circled. So your final answer is 2 times 5 times 5 times 5. And in the final part of this question, we are told to find the lowest common multiple of 30 and 25. So I'm going to write both numbers as a product of their prime factors. So really quickly, 30, I can divide that by 2, and that gives me 15, and I can divide 15 by 3, which is a prime number, and 5, which is also a prime number. And for 25, this is relatively easy. I can divide it by 5, so I have 5 times 5. And what I'll do next is draw 2 Venn diagrams representing these numbers. So I have 30 on the left and 25 on the right. We can see that with both numbers, they both have a common factor of 5. So I'm going to put 5 in the middle, and I'm going to cancel these out. And then with 30, we still have 2 and 3. So I'm going to put 2 and 3 here. And to obtain the lowest common multiple, we just need to work out the product of all the values in the Venn diagram. So your lowest common multiple equals 2 multiplied by 3 multiplied by 5 multiplied by 5, and that equals 150. So the final answer is 150. In question 21, we are told that Sid, Tam and Musa share £6,900 in the ratio 2 to 3 to 5. Work out how much money each person receives. So the first thing we need to do is we need to add all the ratios. So 2 plus 3 plus 5 equals 10. So there are 10 parts. And then we can divide £6,900 across those 10 parts. So 6,900 divided by 10 equals £690. And so Sid, which I'm going to represent as S, and so Sid receives £690 multiplied by 2, which equals £1,380. Tam receives £690 multiplied by 3, and that equals £2,070. And Musa receives £690 multiplied by 5, and that equals £3,450. So Sid receives £1,380, Tam receives £2,070, and Musa receives £3,450. In the first part of question 22, we are given a plan of parts of Maxon's garden. There is a circle inside a triangle. The circle has a diameter of 7 meters. Maxon will cover the shaded area with gravel. Gravel is sold in bags. Each bag of gravel covers an area of 12.5 meters squared. Work out the number of bags of gravel Maxon will need. So the first thing we need to do is obtain the area of the triangle. So remember that the area of a triangle equals the base multiplied by the height divided by 2. So in this case, that's going to be 16 multiplied by 14 divided by 2, and that gives the value of 112 meters squared. And then we need to obtain the area of the circle, and the area of a circle is pi r squared. So given as we know the diameter, the radius is just half of the diameter, so the area of the circle will simply be pi multiplied by 3.5 squared, and that equals 49/4 pi meters squared. And so the shaded area is obtained by subtracting the area of the circle from the area of the triangle, triangle. So in this case, we have 112 minus 49 over 4 pi, and that equals 73.51548,999 meters squared. Therefore, the number of bags equals the shaded area divided by the area that each bag of gravel covers, which is 12.5 meters squared, and that equals 5.88, which is approximately equal to 6. So the number of bags of gravel Maxon will need is 6. In the final part of this question, we are told that Maxon finds that each bag of gravel only covers an area of 11 meters squared. How does this affect your answer to part A? So if each bag of gravel now covers a smaller area, that would simply mean that more bags are needed. So the answer to part A will be higher. In question 23, point C is shown on a centimeter grid. A point P is at least 2 centimeters from the point C. Nadia is asked to shade the region where point P could be. Her answer is shown on the grid. Explain the mistake Nadia made. So very simply, Nadia should have shaded the region outside the circle because it's at least 2 centimeters. It can be no less. The shaded area is within 2 meters of the circle. And so Nadia should have shaded the region outside the circle. In question 24, we are told that this year the total weight of potatoes grown on a farm is 1/5 less than last year. This year the total weight of potatoes grown is 8,000 tons. Work out the total weight of potatoes grown last year. So 1/5 equals 20%, and so if we subtract 20% from 100%, that gives us a value of 80%. So 8,000 tons represents 80%. So to obtain 1%, I'm going to divide 8,000 by 80, and that equals 100. So 100% equals 100 multiplied by 100, and that gives a value of 10,000. So the final answer is 10,000 tons. In question 25, we are given 2 lists of numbers. The mean of list A to the ratio of the mean of list B is 3:5. Work out the value of X. So in order to work out the mean of list A, we need to add all the values in list A and then divide them by the total number of values. So that's 276 plus 400 plus 157 plus 139 divided by 4, and that equals 243. And then for the mean of list B, that will simply equal 530 plus 500 plus 270 plus X plus 440 plus 320 all over 6, and that simplifies to 2060 plus X all over 6. And so what I can now do is I can write 243 to the ratio of 2060 plus X all over 6, and remember that represents 3:5. So to get from 3 to 243, if I divide 243 by 3, that gives me 81. So I'm going to multiply this side by 81, and I'll repeat the same for the right side, multiplying it by 81. Therefore, 5 multiplied by 81 equals 2060 plus X all over 6. And so 2060 plus X equals 5 multiplied by 81 multiplied by 6, which is just the same as 2,430. And so X equals 2,430 minus 2,060. Therefore, X equals 370. So the final value for X is 370. In question 26, we are given a right angled triangle ABC. Calculates the value of X. Give your answer correct to 1 decimal place. So given as this is a right angled triangle, we can use SOHCAHTOA. So 7 centimeters represents the opposite side, which is directly opposite to the angle, and 4 centimeters represents the adjacent. So tan of the angle X equals the opposite over the adjacent, and so tan X equals 7 over 4. Therefore, to obtain the value of X, we need to take the inverse tan function of 7 over 4, and that equals 60.3 to 1 decimal place. So the final answer for question 26 is 60.3. In question 27, we are told that metal rods are made from steel with density 8 grams per centimeter cubed. Each metal rod has a volume of 1,500 centimeter cubed. The maximum mass of metal rods that can be put on a trolley is 300 kilograms. Work out the greatest number of metal rods that can be put on the trolley. Density equals mass over volume. So to obtain the mass, you need to multiply the density by the volume. So in this case, place that's going to be 8 grams per centimeter cube multiplied by 1500 or 1500 centimeter cube. And so the mass equals 12,000 grams, which is also the same as 12 kilograms. So remember, when you convert from grams to kilograms, you need to divide by 1,000. Therefore, to obtain the greatest number of metal rods that can be put on the trolley, given as each trolley can only take a maximum mass of 300 kilograms of metal rods, we need to divide 300 by 12. And that value gives you 25. So your final answer is 25. In question 28, we are told to sketch the graph of y equals x squared plus 2. So remember that the curve y equals x squared looks something like this. And so if we're to sketch the graph of y equals x squared plus 2, we're translating this graph 2 units up. So it will look something like this. And it cuts the y-axis at the points 0, 2. So that right there is your final answer. In question 29, which is the final question for today's video, we are told that the first 3 terms of a Fibonacci sequence are a, 3a, and 4a. The 5th term of the sequence is 286. Work out the value of a. To get the 3rd term, we add the 1st term and the 2nd term. And to get the 4th term, we will need to add the 2nd and the 3rd term. So to obtain the 5th term, we need to add the 3rd term and the 4th term. So what I'm going to do now is work out the 4th term. So the 4th term equals 3a plus 4a, and that's 7a. So I'm going to write 7a here. And the 5th term equals 4a plus 7a, which gives you 11a. Therefore, 11a equals 286. So a equals 286 divided by 11, which equals 26. So the final answer is 26. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope this walkthrough of the 2025 Edexcel GCSE Foundation Paper 2 exam has helped boost your confidence. I'll be uploading more work solutions for other 2025 maths papers. So if you found this video helpful, don't forget to give a thumbs up, as it really helps support the channel and lets me know you're enjoying the content. And if you're new here, make sure to subscribe to S.E.T For You for more step-by-step math solutions, engineering insights, and STEM inspiration. Also, let me know in the comments if there are any specific topics or questions or exam papers that you'd like me to cover in future videos. And until next time, keep practicing, stay curious, and I'll see you all in the next video.